Here to help us better understand the confirmation of Judge Amy Coney Barrett and the possible effects that it could have on the 2020 race is Stephanie Taub, a senior counsel for the First Liberty Institute. So Stephanie, we're today getting Judge Amy Coney Barrett passed through the Senate, sworn in, I'm hearing from Justice Clarence Thomas is the plan. Was this an easier process than you were expecting?
I think in some ways it has been. I mean, every time a Supreme Court nominee faces these sorts of hearings, they face intense amount of scrutiny. It's just a grueling process, and that's especially true of conservative nominees since the 1980s. So we have seen personal attacks coming mostly from the media against Judge Amy Coney Barrett, but in some ways it has been a little bit easier.
And even looking at Justice Clarence Thomas, for example, swearing her in, it is a little bit symbolic in a way, because he had his own Supreme Court fight. Everybody remembers the Justice Brett Kavanaugh fight as well. And I think that a lot of people are welcoming this, I'll call it a more amicable type of confirmation process when it comes to Amy Coney Barrett. But I think that's just more of a testament to the type of woman that she is. I mean, her intellect is not in question. Her personal life is not in question. There's really not much you can do when it comes to this. So I want to ask you, what type of justice do you think she'll be on the bench? Do you think she's going to be someone who is going to ask questions, unlike Clarence Thomas, who is known not to ask too many? Do you think that she'll kind of be a more transformational figure for conservatives on that bench? What are you expecting?
Well, she is a former law professor, so I think she'll be asking really intense, difficult questions on both sides and really come to a thoughtful and fair conclusion. So I think the way she handled herself during the hearings really shows how she will handle herself on the bench. It just shows how capable she is. Because if you remember that moment from the hearings where she held up her blank notebook, which showed that she just had been prepared so well, that she didn't even need any notes during the whole grueling process.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable. I mean, here I am sitting for a show. I got notes and a prompter in front of me, and I can't even do the same thing that she did. But that does speak to exactly the type of person she is. The late Justice Antonin Scalia said that she was her best student that he's ever had, and that is saying a lot when we're talking about this. But when it comes to what exactly a 6-3 conservative majority means on the high court, I mean, it's something that conservatives have not had for a long time, and they still don't necessarily feel it's that way with John Roberts on the bench. But I mean, at the very least, he's a swing vote, put it that way. But what would this 6-3 majority mean for the average American, if anything at all? Will it really affect their lives as much as maybe some of the Democratic colleagues are saying are really putting up as a threat?
Well, I think it definitely has a potential to affect everyday Americans. And when you're talking about, well, we come from First Liberty Institute, where I'm senior counsel, and we are really looking at this from the perspective of religious liberty. We protect religious liberty for all Americans, and just has the potential to really uphold the Constitution against encroachment from other branches. And she is a committed originalist who's dedicated to she really understands the role of judges, which is to uphold the law, not to make the law. And so this is the first time since 1934 that we'll have a reliable conservative majority on the United States Supreme Court.
I mean, that within itself is transformative, but then you look at how young the conservative justices are. I mean, that's been a goal when it comes to Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, Judge Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, it's a majority that is most likely going to stay there for the rest of this generation, assuming that there's no court packing, anything like that. Now, of course, that is a conversation that is taking place right now. But when we talk about Judge Amy Coney Barrett, I mean, you talked about the fact that she's a religious individual who's holds it very dear to her heart. She's an extremely smart individual as well, and she's very likable. We saw her family, 7 kids, all of that has been a centerpiece of this confirmation process as well. Do you think that there will be political advantages for Republicans and President Trump since she is their nominee? They did vote her in, and she is such a remarkable woman. Do you think that there's going to be effects on the 2020 election, or do you think the American people kind of separate the two?
Well, I think it's certainly possible. The American people do support this nomination, and if you just look at her story, as you mentioned, her story is so inspiring. As a mom of 7, she'd be the first mom to be a Supreme Court justice that also had school age children. So this is a lot of working moms will look up to that and see all that she's accomplished. A law professor, now soon to be appointed a Supreme Court justice. It really shows that you can be a mom, you can be a person of faith, and you can serve your country in one of our nation's highest offices.
I think you're exactly right. And even the fact that she went to Notre Dame Law School as compared to Harvard or other Ivy League schools, I mean, that's not to say that Notre Dame isn't absolutely prestigious in what it does, but I think it's a different perspective that a lot of people are happy to see on that bench, because whether we're talking about women, whether we're talking about people of color, there is a conversation to be had that perhaps it is time to change up the perspective a little bit on the high bench. And I think that's something that Amy Coney Barrett does within herself. I think that's very well put. But Stephanie Taub, I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight, breaking down not only this confirmation process, but what could come after with the Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you very much.
Thank you.